And so, coming off the heels of a powerful roundtable discussion and talking about open source communities, we have a very brief and a very quick fireside chat. All of these sessions have just been rather brief today, and we want to welcome Cedric Scott Jr. It's with the human algorithm, if you will. Cedric, how are you? And welcome.
I'm well, Chris. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm very happy to have you here. We're very happy to have you here at GatherVerse. We come to be able to talk about leveraging technology rather than being leveraged by it. Let's just leap in. Let's chop some wood on that. What does that mean, Cedric?
I mean, ultimately, we're talking about the aspect of producers and consumers, right? Users, ownership. It's been said, and I'm sure we've heard it before. Many of us, if you can't pinpoint the product, then you are the product. Which boils down to data, right, and accessibility, and understanding that the human, the person behind all of the algorithm, all of the technological advancement, is the one that's actually driving things, right? So you have to really think about: are we actually using the tool, or is the tool using us? And we can answer some of those questions just by kind of walking through our day to day, even taking simple inventories of just mapping out and writing down, what did I do today? Right? How much technology did I consume? How many platforms did I access? But on the flip side of that, what value did I get from that? Did I only just give, right, my energy, my attention, my time, my money, or did I actually create, build, produce something that could give me a return on my investment of my life in technology?
It's so interesting thinking about the quantification of the reciprocal relationship that we have with these machines that are becoming more, if you will, aware and more capable. What brought you to this way of thinking, Cedric? I know you certainly didn't just wake up overnight and said, I'm going to think about the leveraging of algorithms and how it may leverage me so that I may leverage it. What brought you to this? And by the way, those are two dope posters on the wall, but go ahead.
Appreciate that. Really, it was just thinking about the concept of ownership. Who's behind the screen, kind of pushing the buttons when it comes to the tech and usage. I have a lot of background and experience in education, so even thinking about young people, right, young students. I'm the father of a pre-K, very active young man, and considering, well, how does this shape and meld and begin to kind of formulate what their future and what our future, what the world ends up, essentially kind of looking like. And then also just tapping into other resources and thinking about, what are we seeing right now, and considering the trajectory, right? Like, myself and my own usage of technology. What's happening whenever I pick up my phone? What does that mean? Am I still actually involved in the world around me, or whenever we plug into the matrix, like what actually happens to us? And diving into some resources and things like I believe it was the Social Dilemma. I believe it was the Netflix documentary, and considering even more on because my background is originally in science and chemistry, but also thinking about psychologically, what's happening to us, and also social dynamics whenever we're scrolling through Instagram, and what does it mean whenever you get a dopamine hit when somebody pushes the like button? Why is that important? Why is that valuable to us? And ultimately, what is that doing, and what does that mean for us going forward? And also thinking, well, how can we then, if we understand those things, prepare other people, but then consider leveraging that for a better or greater good?
It seems to me, and I'm really intrigued and fascinated by this particular vertical that we find ourselves on. I remember when social media became a thing, if you will, and it arrived as a freemium. There really was no monetization available within these platforms. And many of them were losing money, and they had a thing called a like and a reaction, if you will, and you would hit that, and it would be for fun. But now we understand now that the like has become a multi-billion-dollar, let alone collectively into the trillion-dollar industry when it comes to the power of a like, when it comes to the power of an algorithm. I think it's far time we ask ourselves, what have we become in the past 10 to 15 years when it comes to social communication, when it comes to things being leveraged? There are great platforms, Cedric, and you know this. There are great platforms and people that have a lot to say, and they'll make a post, and we know that they're subjected to an algorithm. And if you wanted to go further, you may be afforded the opportunity to pay to extend your expression. With that said, I have to say that now these are men, if you will, and women, but this is mankind behind this ingenuity. What happens when we extend artificial intelligence to build an automata, if you will, to scale on top of these foundations? What will that even look like if we haven't even appreciated the magnitude of the algorithm today, let alone the prospectus of what the algorithm will even be tomorrow? Why is this so urgent for us to have these conversations now, Cedric?
Because again, it's the realization that, us people, humankind, right, we are at the helm and behind these things. However, there needs to be a consideration of which or whom among us of humankind are really sitting in those seats and pushing the buttons. Is it truly an actual collective, I'm trying to think, collaborative type of effort where we have representation across the board? Because going into the future, if we're talking about more of the autonomous kind of happenings, beyond that point, it's basically going to be building and replicating what was off of what was already embedded. So the original creation, if you will, is going to then continue to, we'll say, replicate, multiply, and grow and build. But if it starts off with rotten seeds, what does that mean for the future, right? We can't understand or assume that we're going to bear sweet fruit if we don't start off at least with the right thing in mind, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense, and I think if we're being honest, that we realize that there's only a few people in the world that own these powerful platforms that we centralize on, and we even broadcast into many of them, if you will, when it comes to GatherVerse. But we still have a sense of our own agency and autonomy, and not, there's there's an expression: "Don't build your real estate on someone else's empire." You and I remember the days of MySpace and how a lot of people had so much developed and built, and that's disrupted. And look, a lot of you are building, and it's fine, but a lot of people are building on someone else's real estate and someone else's empire, and they are subjected to the dictates of what it is that that person behind the scenes, as you expressed, Cedric, on how they want to distribute your information, your cultural output. You and I are subjected to that, and it seems to me that there's an inherent need to move more autonomously of ownership of our own algorithms, let alone just to be subjected to others. Does that register, if you will, Cedric? Am I saying this right?
It does, yeah. And I'll tell you, Chris, like some of my favorite things to watch are founder stories. And I'll first start by saying that not enough founder stories and movies that I watch are comprehensive in terms of representation. We don't necessarily see a lot of those showcasing women, showcasing people of color across the board, right, et cetera. But what I will say is there's one in particular that what you just said really registered with me along those lines. The story of McDonald's, right? The movie, The Founder, Ray Kroc, right? And you talked about building on somebody else's real estate. And the kind of evil genius of that, right? That whole movie, if you think about it with McDonald's, is that they're not necessarily in the restaurant industry, right? What that particular gentleman did was, instead of just focusing on the franchising and focusing on the models and the restaurants and flow and all those types of things, it was more so, we're going to start a corporation and buy up all of the real estate that these restaurants sit on, and then control what's built on them and how it operates and flows. And if you don't adhere to these rules, you're out, right? So the same thing is with what you're talking about, is if you kind of start with a platform that you've created and nobody else can tell you how to run that, and then you build off of that, you then again have the autonomy of what that looks like. And then going into the future, building and propulsion and whoever you bring into the fold, nobody can tell you, hey, do it this way, because no, I bet I built the foundation. I bought this land. I own the rights, right? Outright. You can't tell me in terms of ownership. So starting with that stake, to your point, is, I think, extremely valuable. And I think also there is some acknowledgement for, if we're building and you happen to be on a platform that's not necessarily owned for you, the consideration there is, well, how do you get to a point of building directly and completely from the ground up for yourself? What does that look like, and how do we help?
I'm gonna take this to a real level, and then we're gonna close it. But I'm gonna have you end it with this, because I can't help but not look at, you got Nipsey Hussle in the background. You got Tupac Shakur from Juice, right? And I'm looking at this and I think about the agency of these artistic brothers, these poets that they are, incredible poets. And they inspired a whole generation of culture, black, white, what have you, Asian, Latin. And they inspired a whole generations plural to this day, of a culture of different thinking in terms of autonomy, in terms of, while you see everyone going this way, go this way with opportunity. And both of those brothers' lives were cut short. That's real. Cedric, are we heading into a renaissance opportunity to be able to have innovation of ownership, as opposed to usership? And could this serve to the benefit of humanity when it comes to controlling our own algorithms of innovation?
Chris, I'll be real. I don't think we're heading into. I think we're there. I think it's happening. We see it, right? I've been tapping in, viewer wise, as far as the GatherVerse Summit 2025. The conversations are being had. The work is being done. The question now more so is, are we actually going to pay attention and make acknowledgement of it and jump in, either building for ourselves or supporting those who are in the seat, right? Actually driving the ship. Because it's occurring. These things are already happening. People are moving. There's amazing people who are operating in the space. So to that point, yes, it's happening. And I think where we really have to find ourselves is, which side do you want to be on? Because I think that the ultimate thing of this is it's kind of a free will type of concept, right?
Mm.
You got to pick a side, right? Like, you can't really toe the line. And a wise man once said, you're either going to build or destroy. Now, I get that people want to dismantle systems and pull things down. That makes sense. Okay, cool. But at the same time, on the other side of that, we do have people who are actively building and producing and growing, right? What's going to become our future. So for us, it's a question of not if, but when, these things will take hold. And also, what is our stance going to be? Where do we find ourselves? Because again, you can't necessarily toe the line. You got to pick a side, right? Are you in or you're not? Because, and that's not to be like a threatening case at all for anyone, but
Sure.
it's more of an encouragement factor to say we
Right.
do have tools, resources, and things at our helm. Are there still disparities? Of course. But at
Sure.
this point, the ideas that we've been generating for some time now are beginning to come to fruition. But it's the next phase of, all right, let's plant this flag and keep moving. And what is your legacy ultimately going to be? Is the question that a lot of us can begin to really answer and put some tangible, actual actions and assets even right behind. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's real talk when it comes to controlling the algorithm. Control your own algorithms, own your own algorithms. And if you want, share it with others so that they could break it with you. Cedric, I really appreciate you routing in with us on this. This is definitely a real conversation and discussion. This is what we're about here. All of you that are with us at GatherVerse, some for the first time. We see so many of you here with GatherVerse.live. We're just here just to break this thing down and to keep it real and just give a cultural perspective. We invite anybody from anywhere around the world to sit here and chop wood. And I hope that all of you would give Cedric a real look on LinkedIn and at other people's algorithms, but connect with him. Go ahead.
But just one last thing. I'd be remiss if I didn't say this.
Kick it.
Because what's really important ultimately for me is narrative. And that's what controlling your algorithm really means, is telling your story. My favorite African proverb I've shared a lot with people is the tale of the hunt, which if I capsize it really quickly, because I know we got to get out of here, is
You're good.
the tale of the hunt will always favor the hunters because you don't hear the side of the story of the lions. It's on us right now as I'm talking to you, right? Stepping into this space. We are the lions. So tell it, because what I will say to kind of close things out is, regardless of anything, your story is going to be told. And more than likely, somebody else will tell it for you if you don't. And I can guarantee, I can bet this shirt in the house I'm sitting in, that somebody else is going to tell your story wrong. So do it
That's
yourself.
real talk. Represent it the way that you know how to represent it at best, with that cultural inherent centricity. Cedric, we definitely welcome you back. I hope you'll sit here and gather with us again in global community. A real shout out. So thank you so much, man.
Appreciate you.
All right.